a black garbage bag shifted and trembled. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it a rough, strained whimper like someone crying into the mud. I was walking near a neglected patch of overgrown grass near a bridge in Ibaraki Prefecture. It was midday and the winter sun was sharp, slicing through the dried-out landscape like a blade. That's when the sound reached me. Not a bird, not a squirrel. It was something alive, something in despair. I ran. The garbage bag was half buried near a drainage ditch. Its shoulder was torn just slightly. The knot tying it shut was tight, but not enough to hold. Through the small gap I saw something gleaming golden fur pushing out. My heart slammed in my chest. I crouched down and ripped it open. The creature inside didn't look at me. Its eyes were glazed, nose cracked, barely responsive. A young Akita pup barely 5 months old. It trembled so violently I thought it might be seizing. Its coat was once rich and golden, now caked with dirt and dried blood. It couldn't even lift its head. Someone had done this. The pup didn't bark, didn't move, just gave a smaller, softer groan as if trying to confirm whether I was real. I pulled it from the bag. It didn't resist, simply surrendered its body into my arms like it had already given up. It was warm, but barely breathing. I could feel every bone under its skin. Someone had wrapped it in garbage and tossed it away like trash. Left it to die under a too bright sky? I didn't think, I acted. I grabbed a spare hoodie from my truck, wrapped the pup inside and sped to the nearest animal clinic 10 minutes away. One hand on the wheel, the other cradling the tiny body to my chest. My name is Daiichi. I've seen hard things in this land, tornadoes, floods, but nothing like this. As I waited at a red light, I looked down at the pup. Its eyes were shut. "Wake up," I whispered. "You're not garbage, do you hear me? You're not trash." Before I could park properly, the vet rushed out and took the pup from my arms. No collar, no chip, no name. I stood there in the waiting room, jeans still stained with mud. My heart was pounding, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. "She's fighting," the vet finally said. "She's hanging on." We made it just in time, but I wasn't sure. The pup hadn't resisted, hadn't barked, had barely made a sound. As if she had already decided she didn't belong here anymore. I stared at the treatment room door and wondered who could abandon an Akita puppy like this. And why couldn't I shake the look in her eyes? Hours passed. Eventually they let me see her. She had an oxygen tube in her nose and 4 needle taped to her tiny paw, her fur still matted and smelling faintly of decay. Under the clinic's soft lighting, she looked even smaller, curled on a heating pad shaped like a question mark. I stepped into the recovery area slowly, not wanting to startle her, but she didn't blink. Her eyes, half open, found me, as if checking whether I was still there or had vanished like everything else in her life. "You did good, little one," I whispered. "You're strong." The vet warned me she might not survive. Severe dehydration, anemia, hypothermia, malnutrition, they even found plastic shards in her stomach. She had tried to eat the lining of the trash bag. It shattered something in me I didn't know still existed. I had never owned an Akita. My life was about farm work and routine, but I had always admired their strength, their independence. Since losing my wife, I had locked away a part of myself. But this puppy, this nearly erased creature, looked at me like she still needed something. They asked if I wanted to name her. It would speed up the paperwork. I looked at her. Her golden face, those rising ears, those quiet eyes. "Sora," I said, "Sky." The vet smiled. "Sora, that's beautiful." Sora stayed at the clinic overnight. I didn't go home. I slept in my truck outside. With the windows fogged over, I replayed everything in my mind, the bag, the cry, her eyes. At 2 a.m., I got out with a flashlight and checked the grassy area again. No more puppies. Just that torn black bag swaying in the wind. That cold night changed something, not just for Sora, but for me. When I returned in the morning, they said she was improving. Still weak, but eating soft food and watching people from the corner of her crate. "She's a quiet one," the tech said. But her eyes that's like she's seen everything. I crouched beside the crate. Sora looked up at me. "No bark?" No tail wag, just eye contact. And in that moment I knew she didn't just need to be rescued. She needed someone to prove the world hadn't given up on her. On the third day, they let me hold her. She was still far too light. I could feel every bone beneath her coat spine, ribs, hips like twisted wires, but she didn't resist. She melted into my arms and pressed her head against my chest, as if she knew this was home. "Hey, Sora," I whispered. "It's okay now." The vet's tone was kind but firm. She'd seen both happy endings and heartbreak. Sora's breathing was better, but her body was still in survival mode. She needed warmth, food, peace, and time. No pressure, no sudden moves. Just presence. So I took her home. My farm isn't much, just a few acres behind a worn-out fence. 2 houses always half under repair, and fields of bare corn stubs this time of year. But it's quiet, it's home. I set up a soft bed in the laundry room, heated pad, bowl of water, dim lights. The dryer hummed gently. I sat beside her for hours as she slept. Occasionally she'd wake and lift her head slowly, watching me as if expecting pain. I didn't move. Just said, "I'm here." She lay her head back down, this time closer to my boots. That night I checked on her every hour. Not because I thought she'd stop breathing, but because I couldn't bear the thought of her waking up alone again, not after everything. The next morning she stood. Wobbly, trembling like a sapling in the wind, but she stood. I didn't cheer, didn't rush to touch her. I watched. She was finding her strength in her own time. When I called Sora, her ears twitched. She blinked. Her tail gave a slow, hesitant wag. I don't know why it hit me so hard, but it did. That afternoon, I moved her bed to the kitchen where the sun hit the floor just right. She lay there for hours, watching birds through the window. I saw her nose twitch at the smell of food. "Do you want to stay?" I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to, because for the first time in months, I found myself making plans again. That evening I heard her bark. Not loud, just a raspy woof. It startled her as much as it did me. She'd seen a squirrel on the fence outside. The kitchen window. One bark, ears up, eyes wide. Then she turned to me, almost as if asking, "Did I do that?" I laughed, a real laugh. "You did it." That day something shifted in her. She began eating more calmly this time, as if she trusted the bowl would be filled again. She wandered the porch, sniffing the air. She walked slowly, carefully, turning back every few steps to make sure I was there. I was. She never walked behind me. Always where she could see me, always knowing where I was. Loud trucks still startled her. Dropped things made her flinch, but she stayed close. That night I sat on the back steps with a mug of unnecessary coffee, watching the golden sunset. Sora curled beside my boots, resting her head like a pillow, breathing steady. I didn't speak much. Sometimes when something broken finally chooses to trust you, words aren't necessary. The next morning, I took her outside for the first time without a leash. The backfield is safe, no cars, no people. Just open space and winter air. She hesitated at the door, sniffed the ground cautiously, then took one step, then another. Then she ran. Not far. Not fast, but she ran, tail high, ears tall. Her golden coat catching the wind, and I felt laughter rise in my chest. A laugh that burst out like something breaking loose. She ran back to me like she'd won a great victory. Sat by my feet like she'd earned something vital. "You remembered," I said. "You remembered how to live." I knelt and gently stroked the softest fur behind her ear. She closed her eyes and leaned in. For every rescued pup, there comes a moment when they stop asking what happened and start wondering what comes next. That moment had come for Sora. In that moment, through that bark and that sprint, she stopped being a victim. She was becoming something new, and I realized I hadn't just saved her. She was pulling me up from something too. A week later, I moved her bed into the living room. By then, Sora had quietly taken over the house. She didn't bark, didn't bite, didn't create chaos. She just existed, present and still, and followed me from room to room. Never in the way, never demanding. just nearby, like a quiet shadow with watchful eyes and careful footsteps. The laundry room felt too small for her now. She was still gaining weight, still slept more than she played, but her spirit was waking up faster than her body. One morning I found her sitting quietly by the front door. She wasn't whining, just watching the dawn through the window, her tail thumping every few seconds. "Do you want to see more?" I asked. "Yeah," I understood. So we went for a drive. Just 10 minutes down the road, we didn't go far. I needed to grab some food from the feed store, and I figured it might do her good to get out a bit. I laid a blanket across the truck seat and gently lifted her in. She stayed close the whole ride, eyes wide, ears alert, taking in the world like everything was brand new. At the store, people noticed her. A few employees came over slowly, kindly. "What a beautiful pup," one said. "Is she yours?" I paused. I hadn't said it out loud yet. But when I looked at her, I knew. "Yes," I said. "She's mine." On the way home, I stopped by the field where I had found her. Just to confirm, I think to remind myself it had really happened. The drainage ditch was still there. The tall grass hadn't changed, but the trash bag was gone. A part of me hoped someone had picked it up. A part of me knew better. That night, I called a friend who volunteered at the local shelter. I told her what happened and asked if there were any reports of abandoned puppies nearby. She hesitated. "It happens more than you'd think," she said. "Some amateur breeders just get rid of unsold puppies quietly, cheaply, quickly." My jaw clenched. I looked at Sora curled up on the rug, paws tucked beneath her chest, finally sleeping without trembling. "She's not garbage," I said. "She's a life that matters." "Yes," my friend said softly. "They all are." Before bed, I dug out my old camera. I used to take photos before life went quiet. I took one of Sora by the fireplace, her proud little face, for catching the light in gold, one ear slightly bent, eyes faintly shining. She didn't move. She didn't need to. She was home now. And for the first time in a long while. So was I. Sometime after 3 a.m., I was woken by a low, steady growl. At first, I thought it was a dream. But there it was again, a husky, quiet sound coming from the living room. I swung my legs out of bed and moved slowly, careful not to startle her. Sora was standing by the window. Her body was stiff, ears drooped low, her tail curled tightly but didn't wag. The fur on her shoulders stood up like static. She didn't bark. She just growled, a low, constant sound, eyes fixed on something outside. I stood beside her and looked through the glass. At first, there was nothing, just dark trees, the grass below, moonlight streaming through the old fence. And then I saw it. A large plastic container, maybe the kind used for livestock feed, was sitting near the gate. It hadn't been there yesterday. No tire tracks, no note. Just left there, tilted in the moonlight. I opened the door and stepped outside. Sora stayed right behind me. The cold hit like a slap, but she didn't flinch. Her focus and awareness were sharper than I'd ever seen. We walked to the gate together. The container wasn't empty. Inside were a torn blanket, a cracked water bowl, and on top, an old, frayed, dirty nylon leash. There was no puppy this time. But someone had left this, a warning, a message. Sora sniffed it once, then lowered her tail and backed away. She circled me twice, then sat down, eyes still fixed on the woods beyond the gate. I stood there, frozen. It felt like the chill was soaking through my socks into my bones. My heart was pounding not from fear, but from something else. That horrible tightness behind your ribs when the world stops making sense. Someone had come back. I brought the container into the house. Sora never took her eyes off it. The next morning I called the shelter again and told them what I'd found. They asked if I wanted to file a report. I said, yes. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. That night, Sora didn't sleep in her bed. She curled up near the front door, resting her head on her paws, watching the world outside. And for the first time since I found her, I realized something. Sora wasn't just healing, she was remembering. 2 days later, I found footprints. Faint but fresh, pressed into soft dirt behind a patch of new grass. Heavy boots, maybe size 11 or 12, They led straight to the back gate and then back again. There was no reason for anyone to be there. No deliveries, no visitors, just silence. I followed the prints toward the old field until they vanished in the shadows. Sora followed, nose twitching, ears flicking at every distant sound. At the final footprint, she stopped, sniffed hard, then gave a quiet growl, and we turned back toward home. That's when I knew this wasn't over. Whoever abandoned her knew where they left her, and they had likely returned to see if it had worked. Later that afternoon, I called the police and explained everything. They sent over a young officer. He had a kind face and a notebook far too clean for this kind of work. He examined the container and the footprints, then listened to my story. No chip, no tags, no ID, he asked. I shook my head. These kinds of people usually don't leave evidence, he said. She's lucky she survived. Lucky, I repeated, glancing at Sora curled up in the sunlight on the porch. She didn't look lucky. She looked like something that had fought to survive. The officer took a few pictures on his phone and said he'd file a report. Before leaving, he knelt and gently petted Sora. This time she didn't back away. She just stared at him, too long, like she was trying to decide who he really was. That night, the wind howled. I couldn't sleep. And Sora, just like before, was by the door again. Same spot, same posture. Her tail resting silently against her side. His body was tightly curled, ears turned toward the shadows. I sat across from him, elbows resting on my knees. Do you remember? I asked, or maybe it's the smells or the sounds he remembers. He's watching just in case they ever return. He didn't move. Just blinked slowly, steadily. And that's when I realized I wasn't the one protecting him. He was the one watching over me. By morning, the wind had calmed, but the sky didn't relax. He paced the yard endlessly, nose low, eyes scanning the trees like they might spit something out. It was like he was waiting for something to come. Gravel shifted. The wind pushed against the shed door. He froze, tilted his head, alert. He had changed. It wasn't just heightened caution, he was more aware. It was as if something ancient buried inside him had reawakened. The gentleness was still there, but beneath it, steel, quiet and sharp. He remembered where he came from, and he wasn't going to let it happen again. From the porch, I watched him patrol the fence line. Still thin, still healing, but every step was full of intent and grounded confidence. He no longer looked like the puppy I'd pulled from a garbage bag by the perfume canal. He looked like a guardian. That morning I gave him a mission. I walked the outer field and dropped a few favorite toys near the old bird shed. Then I called him from the gate. He came running, ears up, eyes locked in. Find them, I pointed. He hesitated, then took off. Not perfect, missed the first, circled back for the second. But the third, his old stuffed bunny, he stopped, placed a paw on it, looked straight at me and wagged his tail. Yes, my little one had instinct. The Akita in him was waking up, not just in form or fight, but in spirit. A full-day sentinel. Aware, brave, uncheckable. Later that day, I brought him back to the shed for the first time. He sniffed everything. Every nailhead, every food sack. Then he paused by the back wall where the plastic crate had once been placed. He growled, not loud, but enough to tell me he remembered. I crouched beside him. You don't have to protect me anymore, I said, but maybe he already trusted me enough to know I would protect him too. That afternoon, the local shelter called. They'd taken in another litter of abandoned puppies. Same breed, same condition. A different place, no ID, no reports. The police called too, no leads, just suspicions. I looked across the room at Sora. He was at the window again, calm but alert. He wasn't the same puppy I'd pulled from that bag, and I wasn't the same either. The next morning, just after sunrise, the phone rang again. A small rescue group needed an emergency foster. Another puppy, left in a cardboard box behind a gas station, cried so loud it woke the clerk. Barely 8 weeks old, tiny, shivering. I hesitated. Akitas are known for independence, especially with unfamiliar dogs. After everything Sora had been through, I didn't want to risk unsettling him again. But before I could even finish the thought, he stood up and walked to the door. He looked back at me just once, and I understood. He wasn't afraid of another broken soul. He knew what it meant to be found. "I'll take him," I told the woman on the phone. An hour later, a car pulled up. A volunteer stepped out holding a bundle wrapped in an old fleece jacket. The puppy trembled. His eyes were too big, ears drooping, paws oversized for his tiny body. His fur was a smoky black, and he had no chip, no collar, no name. When I opened the door, Sora was standing behind me. No barking, no growling, just watching. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, sniffed the puppy's head gently, and sat beside him. The puppy looked up, confused at first, then slowly leaned into Sora's warmth. I nearly cried. We named him Riku. For the first few days he barely ate, and never strayed far from Sora's side. But by that evening I watched him clumsily bow his head to play, and I saw Sora, calm and steady Sora, wag his tail. Just once, the next morning, I found them curled in the sun, nose to nose. Something inside him had changed again. He wasn't just recovering anymore. It wasn't just the puppy who was healing, I was healing too. That night, I stood under the stars with both of them and thought about how much had changed in just a few weeks. This pup, once tossed out like trash, left to die in a garbage bag, had now become a source of safety, of trust. And for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder if this quiet, forgotten farm, long cold and neglected, could become something more. A place of life again. It happened on a Wednesday. I was unloading feed sacks from the truck when it started. The sun had just slipped behind the trees when Sora suddenly froze. Her eyes locked toward the canal, the same place I had found her. Then she barked, not her usual soft, cautious bark. This was loud, sharp, urgent, and she bolted. I dropped the feed, heart pounding, and chased after her. Riku barked behind us, still too small to keep up, his little voice full of panic. Sora stopped at a patch where the tall grass had been flattened into a rough circle. Before I even got there, I knew. The shape, the color, and the awful twist in my stomach. Another black garbage bag, still tightly knotted. Sora growled low, her body tense, nose to the ground. Adrenaline surged as I carefully stepped past her, hands trembling just like the first time. I grabbed the knot, yanked it open, and inside was a stuffed toy. A dirty, torn bunny, not an animal. Not a puppy, just a toy. My blood ran cold. This wasn't random, it was a message. Sora looked up at me. I looked back down at the toy. It was nearly identical to the one she'd carried around during her first week here, one I'd thrown away when it became too worn. Someone had been watching us. I called the police immediately, this time asking for backup. I explained everything, the new breath marks, the footprints, and now this. They took it seriously. "We'll place a patrol along your road," the officer said. "This is no longer coincidence." When I hung up, I sat down on the grass, the toy still in my hands, heavy with dirt and dread. Sora sat beside me, pressing her head against my arm. She knew. She felt it. This pup, once abandoned, abused, discarded, had become something I never imagined. Not just a survivor, but a symbol, a guardian. Sora wasn't just warning me. She was protecting Riku. She brought me back to where my own pain began. And now I realize she's guiding us towards something new. Maybe it's justice. Maybe it's the beginning of an ending. Or maybe just the next chapter in the story we're writing together. But this I know for sure, this Akita pup will never be overlooked again. The patrol car arrived just before sunset. Officer Sanders stepped out, a young man, but this time his face was serious. Another cruiser followed, along with a K-9 unit. They searched the area thoroughly, flashlights sweeping through the fields, radios crackling. Sora sat quietly on the porch, watching everything with calm focus. Riku curled beside her, snoring softly into her fur. Even as the lights passed, she didn't flinch. Even as strangers walked by, she didn't bark. She was calm, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she had a job to do. They found tire tracks near the canal. Fresh, someone had pulled off the road, parked long enough to place that bag deliberately. "This isn't abandonment," Sanders said. "This is targeted," I nodded. I had felt it in my bones, from the toy, from the fear. We handed everything over, the photos, the timeline, even the garbage bag I'd stored away in a box, too unsettled to throw out. The officers said they'd compare it to similar recent incidents in the area. But more than anything, I wanted this to stop. That night, after the patrol cars left and the fields fell back into darkness, I stood at the window and looked at Sora sleeping by the fireplace. Riku nestled close, breathing slow and deep, and in that quiet moment I saw it, not just peace, transformation. She was whole, not perfectly healed, not fully grown, not entirely free of fear, but in the ways that mattered, she was whole, a guide, a guardian. The next morning, I took her to the local animal shelter, not to surrender her, but to volunteer. They needed calm, confident dogs to comfort new arrivals. Sora walked into that space with gentle purpose, as if she'd always belonged. A trembling hound mix hid beneath a chair, but Sora kept her distance, offering only her quiet presence, a living symbol of resilience. 10 minutes later, the hound pup emerged. They didn't play or even touch, but you could feel it, the calm that radiated from the ground beneath them, from Sora's strong, steady energy. The shelter staff were amazed. One of the techs whispered, "She's not just good, she's extraordinary." I looked at her with pride, watching the room, understanding. "She knows," I said. "She's been through it." And in that moment, I realized something I had never said aloud. This wasn't just Sora's second chance, it was mine too. She had been thrown away like garbage, left in a bag to suffocate under an open sky, golden fur matted, her will to live all she had. But she didn't give up, she didn't disappear, she waited. She watched. And when help came, she let herself be found. She could have stayed trapped in fear, could have withdrawn forever. But instead, she did something I will never forget. She faced life, step by step, breath by breath. And somehow, she began to give that life to others. Riku found peace through her. That hound mix at the shelter, who hadn't let anyone near her for weeks, began to feel grounded through Sora, as if she were an anchor. And me? I stopped drifting. This little dog's journey, from discarded to strong, showed me just how vital local rescue groups are. They don't just save lives. They help rebuild the pieces of ourselves we thought were lost. Caring for a rescue dog isn't just an act of love. It's a responsibility. It's listening when they can't speak. It's standing by them when the world turns its back. If Sora's story touched you, please share it. Every share, every like, every voice helps dogs like her be seen, be saved, be loved.